It's not like they're out there signaling their moves. There's a reason why they hire people like Matrix, right? And that's for plausible deniability. And so you got to ask, well, what do they want to be able to plausibly deny? Florida Power & Light is the largest power company in the United States by number of customers. It is a massive organization and has traditionally been a fossil fuel company. They burn natural gas. They have 4 nuclear generators. Almost everything else is gas. Gas, gas, gas. And they see rooftop solar specifically as a huge threat to their business. One of the great curiosities about Florida is that it's known as the Sunshine State, but it's almost impossible to put a solar panel on your roof. And one of the great reasons for that is because our monopoly electric companies have made it very difficult for people to do so.
Despite all of our sunny days, we are not leading the country in solar energy production.
Florida State Senator Jennifer Bradley is proposing a bill that would lower the amount rooftop solar homeowners are paid for their power.
Critics are crying foul and say Florida Power & Light, one of the nation's largest utility companies, wrote the bill to squash competition.
So late in 2021, I investigated a piece in which we discovered that Florida Power & Light had literally written and submitted legislation to a Florida senator that would have killed the rooftop solar industry in the state. In the American system, the legislators are supposed to be writing the laws themselves. The corporations writing the laws, I don't know, it feels somehow dishonest.
So where are we on comments from the named power companies?
So we've requested comment. We haven't heard back from them. We gave them a week. They acknowledged receipt. Floodlight has done 2 articles about Florida Power & Light so far. And I think that reporting was responsible for having the governor veto the bill once it was passed. In the summer of last year, the Orlando Sentinel investigative team received an unmarked envelope containing an explosive series of leaked documents. So normally, journalists compete. One paper gets this story, runs with it. But Floodlight managed to partner with the Orlando Sentinel and get a look at these leaked documents. We stepped in and helped their investigative team, in large part because of a coalition of papers that we managed to build, where we shared all of these documents and we collaborated on them. Matrix is a political consultancy based in Alabama, and you probably never heard of it. And that's okay, they like it that way. They work in the shadows, and some of its biggest customers have been electric power utilities, like Florida Power & Light. They specialize in what they call problem solving. They would purchase advertising. They would send private investigators to look up dirt on people who may not necessarily have been doing stuff that their clients liked. They would get journalists to knock on the doors of politicians that had policies that their clients weren't fans of. It was a whole host of practices that many would consider incredibly questionable.
I've received an initial batch of leaked records from a pseudonym email account. And as soon as I looked at the attachments, I knew exactly what they were.
How did it feel to get a leak showing that you might have been surveilled?
Fucking crazy. A couple of days later, one of those documents was a photo of my wife and I walking our dog.
One of the most shocking things that we discovered was that in 2017, Matrix LLC was having Nate Monroe of the Jacksonville Times-Union followed by a private investigator. And we received documents showing that Florida Power & Light executive Daniel Martell was aware of this surveillance.
It's not difficult to guess that I was being followed, perhaps because I was writing critically about the consulting company's client. You know, the thing about that stays with me is the normal just unremarkableness of what we were doing, I think makes it more eerie, because it's just like, what were they doing? Like, are they profiling us? Like, just trying to figure out what my daily routine was. We started talking for the first time about making sure we were taking measures to protect ourselves and our family solely because of my job. I do not believe that I am the only person who would have been followed. I don't think there's any universe where it made sense only to follow me and not anyone else.
I'm paranoid. I'm very, very paranoid. It's just kind of a sense of unease that permeates everything. I'm worried I'm being monitored all the time. And so, you know, it's a weird way of living right now. This line here, operating as political fixers, Matrix has surveilled journalists, offered cushy jobs to influential public officials, purchased news coverage from seemingly reputable outlets, and run unfriendly legislators and regulators out of office. Did we lose that?
I was going to ask, I think we cut that.
Yeah, we may need to put it back in. I think we're still going to be able to prove all of this very clearly. It's 1,200 pages of leaked documents. There's no way one single news organization in the state could take this story on. But together, it's turned into a major scandal.
Some state lawmakers are calling on Florida's Attorney General to investigate one of the most powerful power companies in the country.
Executives at Florida Power and Light, or FP&L, are under fire for using dark money to support political candidates in order to split the vote in races across the state.
Concerns come from several recent scandals, including spying on a local journalist who had investigated FP&L's bid to buy JEA.
Matrix LLC was active in 10 states, at least. They had a multi-million-dollar yearly business. They're still in operation today. And a lot of questions remain. And making sure that that industry doesn't get to work in the shadows is a lot of the work that Floodlight does as investigative journalists. I was not born in the United States. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 6. I was born in Santo Domingo de Guzman, the oldest city in the New World. Don't let anybody forget it. They certainly won't. And yeah, I mean, it was really weird coming here. I got here right after Hurricane Andrew, and there were no leaves on the trees. I remember telling my parents, like, what have you done? Miami's incredibly vulnerable to climate change because it's built on a rocky sponge. You can't build a dike, you can't build a dam, you can't build a ditch. You have to learn how to live with the water. And the oceans are rising quickly, and they're rising because we are burning fossil fuels. Florida Power and Light burns a lot of fossil fuels. Utilities across the country burn a lot of fossil fuels. And the public has a right to know about how they affect democracy and how they affect the climate. Hello.
Morning.
Hey, Raúl.
Mario, nice to meet you.
Un placer. Nice to meet you.
So we have our main offices here. This is the space that we converted from the mechanic shop into our storage facility. And this is where we maintain most of our panels.
If that bill had passed, would your company still be in operation today?
No. That bill that they tried to pass would have destroyed the solar industry. The way that bill was written was not to protect anybody except the profits of the public utility companies, the Florida Power and Light of the world. This is not just my live stream. If that bill would have passed, it would have affected all 62 families. You know, I am responsible for, you know, their salaries. They pay their mortgages, they pay their food. If any of these attacks on solar are passed, it's going to have a tremendous impact on the economy, because it's not just the solar installer, it's all of those employees and all those employees that they support the local economy.
A lot of people are working very hard to prepare Miami for what's to come, but the truth is we're not prepared. Mom, hello.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Mi amor.
Mwah.
¿Te preparo algo?
Lo que tú quieras.
Yo tengo unas almendritas. Mira, las tenía aquí.
I love this place, and it's probably not going to be a fun place to live by the time I'm set to retire when I'm 80. No, mira.
Juan Ariza.
The reason I stay in Miami, and my thoughts on this change daily, but the reason why I continue to stay here, my family's here, I love it here, and sometimes you have to stay with the sinking ship.
So what's next, Mario? Obviously the story is stretching across the Southeast. Do you have thoughts on how we're going to track down these stories kind of beyond Alabama and Florida?
I think it's really interesting to try and trace the money, right? Like if you follow the money from the utilities to their lobbying efforts, through the front groups, to sort of create this anti-solar propaganda that we're seeing now. Because I used to cover drug cartels and like the mob and mafias. Obviously a little bit different than what's going on here, but the fear is sometimes the same.
What we're seeing is a manipulation of democracy in a really successful way. And what they're doing is actually, you know, above the table, but behind the scenes. And that's the question that I think readers are going to ultimately have is, even though this might not be illegal, is it fair? Is it right? Am I having my best interest considered here? Those are the details that we're trying to provide to the reader so that they can come to their own conclusions.
I would really like this to start a conversation about how power companies are able to shape political opinion and impact the political process without any meaningful scrutiny or transparency. I think that as the necessity for transitioning away from fossil fuels becomes urgent, our scrutiny of these companies and of the societal agreement that we've made with them, you know, it's time for us to kind of talk about what's in our utility bills, right? And it's kind of time for us to talk about how much power these power companies have. And so that's the idea. I hope it gets people talking.